Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Michael Halper, and this is week 3 of our 15-week sales training webinar series. Just a quick reminder that this webinar series is basically motivated by the recent book that I published called The Smart Sales System. So this book basically takes really everything that I've written for the past. I've been working on webinars and blog posts and ebooks, and wrote another book in 2012. And so all the stuff that I've been producing, I basically try to pull it all together, update the tips, update the tactics, and put it together in a system that you can then follow and implement. So the one thing that I'm really proud of about this book is I really do believe it is a system, and that's the way that this is different from other sales training books, is that this is something that is not just tips. It is something that you can implement and adopt. If you want to get a copy of your book, here is a link to where you can get it on Amazon. And this webinar series basically aligns with the book. Every week we are going through either a few chapters or a chapter and focused on that particular topic for a week. Here's our schedule for the week, and this is where we are right now this week. We are going to talk about creating sales scripts, emails, voicemails, and objection responses. And what we did last week, and if you missed week 1 and week 2, those are recorded, and you can go back and watch those. Go to our blog or our YouTube channel, and you can see recordings of those sessions. But what we did last week is we worked on level 1. So just to refresh your memory, the system is structured around 3 levels. So level 1 is your sales message, not your sales script, but your sales message, which is the collection of talk tracks and talking points that you should be saying when talking with prospects. Level 2 takes those talking points and can use those to create your sales tools, such as scripts, email messages, voicemail scripts, and whatnot. And once you have those tools, then we can work on level 3, which is how you can use those tools and how you can effectively cold call, cold email, deal with objections, and whatnot. So last week we went through the process of building your message. This week we're going to focus on level 2, which is taking your sales message and how we can use what we brainstormed last week to create all of these different documents. The first thing that I want to talk about is a concept that we use called building blocks. And as I mentioned last week, we worked on creating your sales message, which was at the most simple level. It was going through these different categories and brainstorming a handful of bullet points of key things to talk about. Key things to talk about regarding your product, identifying the different target buyer types that you're going after, a few benefits, a few pain points, a few questions to ask, maybe a few customer examples. So we're just brainstorming and organizing our thoughts in those different areas. And so what that can look like is what we typically probably would come up with going through that process are individual points. So individual product points, individual value points, individual pain points, individual questions. And that's what we would have come up with if you would have gone through the process that we recommended. Now what we can do is we can take all those points and we can put them together to create what we call building blocks. So we can take your individual product points, such as your differentiation and key details about your product, and we can create a building block for your product and for all the things that you should talk about regarding your product. We can create a building block for your value, for your pain points, and whatnot. I'll show you what those individual blocks look like, but the key thing here is that if you have those blocks, then it's extremely easy to take those blocks, and in the same way that you would build a house or build something out of raw materials, we can use those raw materials of building blocks to create all of your different scripts and emails and voicemails, and I'm basically going to show you what that looks like. The first thing I want to do is show you what the building blocks that we have to work with look like, and then we'll show you how to put those together. So I'm just going to flip through the building blocks that we can put together based on the sales message that we created last week. So the first building block is a product building block. And these are things that you can put into that building block. But by the way, I'm going to show you different building blocks. You don't have to use these exactly, and this is just a starting place, right? So from what I have through the process that we used last week, these are different things that we can talk about regarding your product. This is what you sell. These are the features. These are the benefits. This is how you differ. These are some impacts if someone doesn't purchase your product. These are some bragging points about your company. Your building block for your product might look different. Maybe use the structure exactly as is, but this is an example of what your product building block can either look like or a starting place of what you can build on. You have a value points building block, which is we help insert your target buyer for your particular message, value point 1, 2, 3. So for example, if you're creating a message that is for chief financial officers, we help chief financial officers to access their financial data in real time on any web-connected device. That's an example of your value points block. We can use your pain points to create a pain points building block. When I talk with other chief financial CFOs, I know that they often have challenges with it's difficult and time-consuming to reconcile the quarterly reports. It's difficult to communicate with all the different stakeholders. Are you having any challenges with those? Are you concerned about any of those challenges? That's a pain points building block. By the way, as I'm showing you these building blocks, these are going to serve a couple purposes. The main purpose is we're going to be able to mix and match all these blocks to create a bunch of documents. I'm going to show you that in a minute. The other thing is that when you really start to get your hands around this can also change the way you think. So instead of, when you're talking to a prospect, instead of trying to think of the individual point that you need to say, you can actually start to think, okay, this is where I need to talk about my value points building block, or this is where I need to talk about my value points. And you can start to think of your message in block format, and that makes it really easy for you to shift, to identify what to talk about and to shift from one topic to another. Let's go through more of your building blocks. So we can take your pain questions that we came up with, and that's a building block of the different questions you can ask to look for pain points. We can take your name drop that we helped you to create last week and help you to create your name drop building block. Now, those are all building blocks that you can create from your sales message that we helped you to create. We're also going to give you some building blocks that we've created for you that basically work for almost every salesperson. So these are just kind of standard building blocks that don't really change from one salesperson to another, although you could modify these specifically for your situation. But they're generic and standard questions that apply to most situations. But I'm a firm believer in there's certain current environment questions that you should ask. And these are basically questions to identify what is the prospect doing in the particular area where you have something to sell or something to offer. So these are like, what are you using today? How long have you been with them? How's it going? What do you like? What don't you like? So these are your current environment questions. And of course, for your particular product, you could probably modify or add a couple. There's also qualifying questions that you can ask, and I divide qualifying questions into 4 categories. So you have need versus want. These are some questions that you could ask to probe to see if your prospect genuinely needs what you have or if it's more of a want. You should find out if your prospect has the ability to spend, has money to spend, and the financial ability to purchase from you. And here are some funding availability questions. Here are 2 more categories of qualifying questions. Decision authority, so these probe to see how much decision-making power your prospect has. Level of competition questions. By the way, I'm showing you scripts and questions here today. When we get to level 3, we're going to go into all of these topics in more detail. So for example, I'm showing you qualifying questions here. I'm just showing you the questions. I'm not really explaining them. When we get to level 3, there will be 1 week that we will go through qualifying alone. That will be the only topic for a whole week, and we'll talk about these categories of questions and these questions in detail. I'm just showing you the building block at this point. Sales takeaway. So here are some examples of ways to take away to do a takeaway on a cold call or in a meeting. And you wouldn't say all of these, but here's some different options, and this is a building block. Closing questions. Here are some trial closing, soft closing, and hard closing questions. Some meeting warm-up questions. So these are questions you can use when meeting with a prospect. And here are some networking questions. Once you have your building blocks, you can use those to create call scripts. And here is how you could do that. So on the left side, this is one type of call script. I'll go through a few different call scripts, but on the left side, you basically have the blocks. And as you can see, if you have the blocks, it's easy to stack those in different orders to create a flow of how to start out a call and a different order of different things that you could try to talk to someone about. So I'm going to go into more detail on how to cold call when we get to level 3. There will be a module in itself on how to cold call, and I will talk to you about how to use this call script and how to bounce from one block to another, because you wouldn't necessarily go from the top of the call script flow and go through each block to the bottom. You would bounce around according to how the prospect responds. But at least to build your script and to build your flow, the blocks make it extremely easy. And let me just show you what these blocks look like. The content for the blocks is on the right side. So the first step is an introduction. Hello Maria, this is Michael Halper. I'm with Sales Scripter. Have I caught you in the middle of anything? Great. Well, the reason for my call is we help chief financial officers to benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3. I actually don't know if those are areas that you want to improve or not, and that's why I'm calling with a question or two. If I could ask you real quick, how concerned are you about this? Are you having any challenges with that? Is it how much of a priority is it for this? Current environment questions. Who are you using today? How long have you been with them? How's it going? Oh, well, when I talk with other CFOs, they often have challenges with pain 1, pain 2, pain 3. Are you concerned about any of those areas? Oh, well, based on what you shared, it might make sense for us to talk in more detail. The reason why is we sell product X. It includes this and that. Basically, this can help you to benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3. Some ways we're different is we're easier with this, and this is a better cost, and we're easier with this. Some additional product points. By the way, these scripts list out all the different things you could say. It's not that you would want to say everything that is in this flow and in this script. Based on how the conversation's going in that particular situation, you might want to emphasize certain things and skip other things. We're just filling up this building block with different ideas of what you could say when it's time to talk about your product. And then the close is, but I've called you out of the blue. I'm not sure if this is the best time for us to talk. Is this something you're interested in talking in more detail? Are you available for a 15 and 20-minute meeting where I can share some examples of how I've helped other CFOs to benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3? Or are you available to talk about this right now? So that is what we call value points intro call script, and we refer to it as value points intro because it basically starts out right early at the beginning of the call, emphasizing your value proposition. Now we could take that exact same flow, but just change out the building block at the beginning take out the value points and insert your building block for pain points. And let me show you what that looks like. Same introduction, and then right after the introduction, great. Well, the reason why for my call is we work with CFOs and help them to solve the challenges of pain 1, pain 2, pain 3. I don't know if you're concerned about any of those areas, and that's why I was calling with a question or two, if I could ask you real quick. Now, the remainder of the script is exactly the same. It's just the intro that's slightly different. Here's another version. So this is what we call the name drop intro. Basically, taking out the pain points and inserting with a name drop example. Same introduction, and now instead of the pain points or the value points, it's great. Well, the reason for my call is we worked with company XYZ and helped them to decrease the time it takes to do this. Ultimately, that led to them being able to increase their market share and decrease their costs, their operating costs at the same time. Now, I don't know if I can help you in the same way that we helped them, and that's why I was calling you with a question or two. If I could ask you real quick, and now the flow and the building blocks below this are the exact same. Here's a different version. So I'm not a real big fan of talking about your product at the beginning of your conversations with prospects. I like to keep that towards the end, but sometimes people like that, or maybe there's something really compelling or interesting about your product and it makes sense to lead with it. Here's an example of starting the call with your product details. Well, great. Well, the reason for my call is we offer service XYZ. What that basically includes is we'll do this for you, we do that for you, and we do this for you. And then here are other details about your product that you could share. Of course, you wouldn't want to say all of that. We're just giving you the different options of what you could say. But I don't know if we're a good fit with, I don't know if you're a good fit with what we provide, and that's why I was calling with a question or two. If I could ask you real quick, and then the rest of this call script is pretty much the same. So those are just some quick examples of how to organize your building blocks to create different call scripts. We actually have different versions. I just don't have the time to go through all of those here on this video. But if you want to view some other versions, you can go to either Sales Scripter, and in our software we have a script library with additional call scripts, or you can find additional scripts in the book, The Smart Sales System. Basically, we also have a cross-sell script, a website visitor follow-up script, event follow-up script, email follow-up script. So a handful of different scripts that you might want to check out. We can also use your building blocks to create email templates. I do want to point out these email templates, by the way, we'll explain the reason why these emails are designed this way and how to use these, how to do cold emailing later when we get to level 3, and there will be a module where we will only talk about cold emailing. But what I want to show you right now is basically how you can take the building blocks that you create and use those to create individual cold email messages. So here's an email message that focuses on the value points building block. Now the reason for my email is that we help CFOs to benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3. I don't know if you want to improve any of those areas, and that's why I'm reaching out. Are you available for a brief 15 to 20 minute meeting where I can share some examples of how we've helped other CFOs to and then end with a benefit? So that's just an example of a cold email built around your value points. I'm not saying that's perfect. I'm not saying you can use that exactly as is, but what my goal here is for you to get the idea of how you can brainstorm your benefits, use that to create a building block, then use the building block to create a cold email message. Maybe if nothing else, this gives you a starting place that you can build around for creating your message. We can do the exact same thing with value points. So here are value points. The reason for the email is we help CFOs with the challenges of problem 1, problem 2, problem 3. I don't know if you're concerned about any of those areas, and that's why I'm reaching out, and then the close. You can also use your name drop example building block to create a cold email. So the reason for the email is that we worked with company XYZ and helped them to decrease the amount of time it takes to process XYZ. This ultimately led to them being able to increase market share and decrease operating expenses at the same time. I don't know if we can help you in the same way, and that's why I'm reaching out. Are you available for a meeting? We can use your pain questions. This isn't a great email, but maybe I wouldn't lead with this email, but this is an okay email to maybe have at the end of a series. But I'm trying to determine if we can help you in the same way we've helped other clients. These are some of the questions I would ask you to figure that out. Include some questions. Do any of those connect with a challenge or interest that you have? If so, let's put a few minutes on the calendar. Now, this is basically an email where you're starting to give up, and you've sent a few emails, maybe the other emails that I showed you, and they're not responding. So now you're just kind of just sending them the questions you'd like to ask them. Here's a product email. The reason for the email is that we provide product X, and that includes this, this, and this. Some ways we differ from other options out there are we're easier, we're cheaper, we're better. Are you available for a brief meeting? Those are just a few examples of how we can use your building blocks to create email messages. We have a whole library of additional email messages. You can do that exact same thing to create voicemail follow-up emails, meeting follow-up emails, call follow-up emails, LinkedIn emails. So in our Sales Scripter software, we have a whole library of cold email messages. So if you want to access more emails or get some more ideas, you can either go to Sales Scripter, or you could, the Smart Sales System book also has a more extensive email template library and examples. We can also use your building blocks to create voicemail messages. So here's an example of a voicemail message where we're using your value points. So, hi Mary, this is Michael Halper calling with Sales Scripter. The reason for my call is I help sales trainers to decrease the amount of time it takes to train new sales hires, decrease turnover rate, and improve the overall performance of new sales hires. I don't know if you want to improve any of those areas, and that's why I'm reaching out. I'm going to try you again next week. If you would like to reach me in the meantime, here's my number. Again, this is Michael Halper calling from Sales Scripter, 281-809-4061. Thank you. I look forward to talking to you soon. I like that voicemail message. That's a voicemail message I would leave, but you might want to change that a bit. But either, and by the way, we'll talk about voicemail strategy and leaving voicemails in level 3 when we talk about using voicemail messages as part of your sales strategy as a module by itself. But I want to show you here how you can use your building blocks to create voicemail messages, and you could build off of this. Here's a pain points message, pretty much exactly the same, just inserting your pain points in the middle of the message. Name drop message, exactly the same, just sharing an example of a past customer and sharing a couple benefits of how you've helped them, and then doing a takeaway. Here's a product voicemail message. I don't think this is a great voicemail message, but if you're gonna, I'm showing you 4 different voicemail messages here. So if you were gonna call and leave 4 different voicemail messages, and this is your 4th one, it's not too bad. If you're only gonna leave 1 message, I probably wouldn't leave your product message, but here's using your product building block to create a voicemail message. We can also use your sales message and your building blocks to create objection responses. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to flip through the common objections that you would face, and I'm going to show you how you can basically just respond to all of those with your different building blocks. By the way, there's a lot of logic with dealing with objections and how to use these responses, and we will get into that when we get into level 3, and there's a module specifically about dealing with objections, and we'll go through all these objections and objection responses again. But I'm just showing you how you can use your building blocks to fill in the responses, and then we'll come back to this later when we talk about objection handling. But a real common objection is from gatekeepers. What's this in regards to? Well, you could just, instead of saying, well, I'm calling to schedule an appointment, I'm calling to introduce my company, instead of saying that, you could respond with your value points. Well, the reason for my call is we help CFOs to decrease the amount of time it takes to run their daily reconciliation reports. Is this a sales call? Well, the reason for my call is I work with CFOs and help them to decrease the amount of time it takes to run their reconciliation reports. I'm not interested. Oh, I understand. If I could ask you real quick, and then just ask one of your pain questions. Another option for I'm not interested is you could deflect to your pain points. Oh, I understand. When I talk with other CFOs, they often have challenges with that it's difficult to do this and it's tough to do that. Are you concerned about any of those? Just send me some information. I can certainly do that, so I know what best to send you. Can I ask you real quick? And then ask one of your pain questions. Your current environment questions are great questions for just send me some information. I can certainly do that, so I know what best to send you. Can I ask you real quick, who are you currently using today? And here's a response to deflect back to your sales process. We'll explain this response more when we talk about objection handling. We already used someone for that. Oh, okay. You could respond to that with your current environment questions. Oh, great. Who are you using today? How long have you been with them? How's it going? You could also respond to we're already using someone today with your pain questions. Oh, great. If I could ask you real quick, how important is it for you to decrease the amount of time it takes to run your reconciliation report? We already used someone for that. Oh, great. Well, when I talk with other CFOs, they often say that it takes a long time to run their reconciliation report. How concerned are you about that? Regarding the we don't have any budget or money to spend, you could reply to that with a deflection back to your sales process. We'll explain this more when we talk about objection handling. But you could also reply to that with your pain questions building block. Oh, I understand that. But if I could ask you real quick, how important is it for you to decrease time in this particular area? You could also reply with your pain points building block to this objection. Oh, I understand. When I talk with other CFOs, they often have challenges with the reconciliation report. How concerned are you about that? We're not making any changes right now. You could reply to this objection with your pain questions. Oh, I understand. If I could ask you real quick, how do you feel about your ability to successfully onboard new sales hires? You could reply to this objection also with your current environment questions. We're not making any changes right now. Oh, I understand. If I could ask you real quick, do you guys currently use any type of new sales hire onboarding training process? We are not making any changes right now. Oh, I understand. When I talk with other sales trainers, they often say that the new sales hire ramp up time is too long, often anywhere between 3 to 6 months. How concerned are you about that? You could also reply to this objection by deflecting back to your sales process, and we'll explain how that works when we talk about objection handling in more detail. Call me back in X months. You could reply to this with a deflection to your sales process, and we will explain that when we talk about how to handle objections. But you could also reply with your a modified pain points building block, which is when they say, call me back in X months. Oh, I can certainly do that. But when we last spoke, you mentioned you had challenges with this, and this. Are you sure it makes sense to put off talking it for another X months with those concerns going on? We can also use your building blocks to create meeting scripts. And by the way, so here's a first appointment script. And I'm not saying that you should show up for a first appointment with a script in front of you and read from a script throughout the entire meeting. I'm not saying to do that. I am saying that you might want to organize the different things you plan to talk about with a prospect in a first appointment. You might want to be prepared with a good idea of the key points you want to make. And you could have questions and points on a piece of paper in front of you that you might look at from time to time when you're thinking about what the next thing to talk about. That won't look bad at all. It would look bad if you read from your notes directly the whole entire time. But when you're asking questions, I think it might even make a good impression if you look down at your notes and look at your list of questions to ask. Here on the left side are the different building blocks and how we can use those to create an organized flow for how to handle first appointments with prospects. So you might want to start out with some warm-up questions. How's your day going so far? You could talk about a certain event. How long have you been here? What did you do before you came here? Where are you from? So just some good soft questions before you really start the meeting. Your current environment questions are a great way to start an appointment with someone. What are you guys currently using today? How long have you been with them? How's it going? Pain questions. Maybe you asked a couple of those on a cold call. It's a good idea to go back to those or to ask any of those that you didn't get a chance to ask. Can always fall back on that, just sharing some pain points that you help to fix with your prospect. Towards the end of an appointment, I think that's a good time to start to get into some details around how you can help them by sharing some product details. We'll talk about qualifying in an upcoming module, but towards the end of your first appointment is when you want to start more hard qualifying and asking some harder qualifying questions, and then some closing questions at the end of your appointment. So that is how you can use your building blocks to create a first appointment script. You will have first appointments with prospects, but if you're networking, you often will have appointments and coffee meetings and meetings with networking partners, which could be similar to meeting with prospects, but you might want to modify them a bit. We'll actually talk about networking in an upcoming module, and there's a full chapter on networking in the book, The Smart Sales System. But here's a flow of how you could use the building blocks to create a networking script. And again, I wouldn't want you to read from this script when you're meeting someone over coffee, but not a bad idea to have an organized way of how to structure your meeting with a networking partner and the different things you should talk about. And you could start out with some networking questions. How's your day going so far? What do you do? How long have you been doing that? What do you like about it? Where are you from? Even knowing you're networking and you're not trying to sell to the people that you're networking with, hopefully, and we'll talk about why and why not to do that and when to sell to them and whatnot when we dig into networking. But let's just say, even if you're not directly trying to sell to your networking partner, nothing wrong at all with asking your current environment questions. What are you guys using? How long have you been with them? How's everything going? You may want to ask some of your pain questions to networking contact, because you never know, depending on where the conversation goes, maybe they might need what you sell. You could share some pain points. Even if you aren't trying to sell to them, if you're networking and you might be sharing referrals and leads, you should probably at some point share with them what you sell and talk about it. And this is where you would want to use your product building block. And then there's always something to close, whether you're networking or selling. So you might want to ask some of your closing questions, and your closing questions for your networking script should be a little different. It really rounds out level 2. There's certainly other scripts and email templates that we use and we can offer you. There's just not enough time and space here in these training modules to go through our full library of documents. Like I said, you could access those in other places. And that finishes out level 1, level 2. And what we'll do next is we are ready to move to level 3. And we are going to start with talking about the sales process, managing the sales process. And that's next week. And while the sales process might not sound real interesting to you, I think most salespeople think, oh, I know what to do when I'm engaged. It's really just getting engaged that's most important. The Smart Sales System focuses on improving what you say, what you ask, what you close for, improving your ability to close, improving how you respond to objections. And with all of that, it's really key for you to know where you are in the sales process, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and what you're trying to accomplish next. Because knowing all of that improves your ability to know what to say, how to respond, what to ask. So one of the foundations for the Smart Sales System is improving your ability to manage the sales process and have clarity for the different steps you're trying to take a prospect through. And we're going to talk about all of that next week when we talk about managing the sales process, and that's what we'll do next week. Now, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, if you can like, comment, share, subscribe, that would help us tremendously. If you are ready to start to implement the Smart Sales System and you want to know how best to do that, I've been talking about 3 levels, so I don't want to confuse you, but the easiest way to look at the Smart Sales System is as a 3-legged stool. This isn't the 3 levels that I was just sharing with you. These are 3 legs of how the system basically kind of stands on its own. So leg 1 would be sales methodology, which is all of our training, and you've gotten a portion of that here today. You could go to our YouTube channel to access our past training modules and our full training catalog. You can also access our training in the book, The Smart Sales System, and on our blog posts and whatnot. If you're ready to move on to the next level, the second leg of the three-legged stool is our software platform of SalesScripter. So SalesScripter will allow you to, I talked about the three levels of build your message, build your sales tools, and then implementation of level 3. SalesScripter will help you with all three levels, but there's actually an area of SalesScripter called the Sales Message Builder that will help you to build your sales message. There's a sales playbook, which is a library of scripts and templates. Most of what you've seen here today is in that library with more documents that you haven't seen here today. There's also a CRM, email automation. And then the third leg of the three-legged stool is professional services, and that includes sales consulting and sales coaching, where we definitely can work with you one-on-one to either build your strategy, build your message, or help you on a coaching basis, on a recurring basis to get everything going and whatnot. If you have any questions, here is my information. Feel free to reach out to me directly.